Yo, what up, world? We're back with another session of Black Sheep. Today's guest, I got my brother here, Mr. Dre Miles.
Yes.
How are you?
Yes, I'm pretty good.
Good. So today, guys, as we've been gearing up on Black Sheep, it has been important that we use our voice and we speak out loud, guys. And so one of the things, before we can unpack our trauma and the things that we've been through, we got to be willing to unsilence it. We got to be willing to talk about it. So today's episode is going to be about the silent part of our trauma and what it does to us, how it is healing but yet deceptive at the same time. And so one of the things that we want to do here is we want to talk about the good and the bad about the word silent and how it has affected our lives, you know, and how we got to be able to live out loud to get the proper healing that we need. So today I have Mr. Dre Miles here, my guy. I call him Turtle, y'all. That's his name for me, Turtle. How you been, man?
I've been pretty good.
Good,
I really
good.
Can't complain. I'm just happy to be here. Glad you brought me out here.
Man, you know what? It is truly a blessing to be able to impact your life. In the short time that I've actually been around you, I really thank God for just bringing us together and drawing us near. And so now, you my little homie. It's been really good.
It happened so fast. Too.
Yeah.
You know, it's already been, what, about almost a year
Almost
now?
a year now. Yeah.
So.
And so I'm just so grateful to be able to just pour into your life and encourage you through your trauma. And more importantly, I think it's so great that as we break out our silence, that we start with a man, right?
Right.
Because for me, it is so hard in today's society for men to talk.
Yeah.
A lot of men, you know, some men, you know, they feel good speaking amongst other men, you know what I'm saying? And then some just don't, you know, some what silence does for us a lot of times, it bottles us up, you know what I mean? So it's so important that we be able to talk and just kind of live out loud through our truth and the things that we are so bottled up with and packed up with. I am so honored that you were okay as a man coming on here and being vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Man.
We got to step out of our comfort zone sometimes.
Yes.
You know, that's how you grow, so.
Absolutely, man. So as we just talk about silence, man, tell me, how silence hurt you? How has being silent hurt you?
Well, I feel like from my experiences, being silent about, you know, whatever issues that I have or I have whatever's on my chest, it does nothing but like weigh you down. It just felt like it just weighed me down, and it's you know, your outlook on life is just kind of negative because you just bottle up so much stuff and you internalize a lot of stuff, and it's just you know, not good. It wasn't good for my mental health, and, you know, stuff like that. So that's my general experience from being, you know, silent about.
Yeah.
You know, stuff that's on my chest.
Silent, it is a silent killer.
Yeah.
You know, for me, being silent and not being able to talk, even today, now, when I feel like I can't express myself or talk, it's a trigger. So I have to watch myself because more importantly, more than anything, I just want to be able to say what I need to say, regardless, right?
Yeah.
So silence can be such a silent killer. You know, when we get lost in our thoughts, man, and there's no one there to help give us some influence or some guidance to be able to get out that, what I would call stinking thinking, right? So it is very important that we start having these conversations and communicating, reaching out and encounter other people that are dealing with the same thing, because there's just so many of us that are just still silent and still struggling. You know what I'm saying?
And you get to the point where like you do it for so long, and you just, like you said, you just find yourself lashing out. You know, at the wrong times, and it could, you know, lead to something like, you know, really bad for you. You know, later on in life. So
absolutely. So what are some things? So for me, the way I've actually dealt with my silence, for me, I realized that journaling was a thing for me. Depending on what I'm dealing with silently and my support system, I feel like depending on that person, each person kind of gives me something different. And so being able to have that opportunity to pour in my silence, having someone to talk to, right? I've told people so much that I've used therapy and God's guidance as a way to deal with my silence. Well, what are some of the things that you do to deal with your silence?
Well, I totally agree with the journaling, because that's some of the things that I've done before in the past, and it was just a good way to really just let it all out, because it's nice to have someone to talk to, but that's not always an option. Some things you just don't really feel comfortable with sharing with somebody, right? So it's good to let it out in a diary. You can go back, read it to yourself, and then you can see where you were at that point in life, and then where you are now.
Growing.
So it's a good way to see what you dealt with back then, and how it always worked out, over time. So in the future, whenever you deal with, problems in life, you can go back to, okay, I've overcome this before. I've overcome, different situations in the past. And as that journaling, it serves as a reminder for you from all the stuff that you've been through, how you dealt with it back then. So
So to piggyback off something you just said, what are some of the experiences that made you feel like you had to stay silent? Like, what are some of the experiences that you feel like?
Okay, so like,
if you had to give me one, give me one.
It's just just knowing that most people wouldn't understand. Everybody's experiences are different, and everybody's dealing with their own problems too. So not everybody's always going to be open to whatever you have to get off your chest, and people are not going to be always understanding about. Whatever it is you going through. And some of the things I feel like when I had issues and I wanted to vocalize them is that I didn't want it to be used against me. So so that was like one of the main reasons why I pretty much just kind of kept anything that I had, to myself, because you don't want to be, because it requires a level of vulnerability when you express, certain things that that you deal with in life. So I just wanted to protect myself. It's just a wall that you build.
So would you agree that that's in those examples, that was one of the biggest reasons that you feel like you stayed silent?
It's just a protection, just kind of protect yourself.
Right. And so one thing that I try to tell people that in our silence that we don't realize is that when we're not sharing or when we're not talking to people, we don't know what our silence, how that can connect to someone else, right? It could connect to someone else healing. It can even be your own breakthrough if you just had that one person that you can just get that off your chest, right? So, but I understand when the whole concept, being on that journey myself of feeling like nobody's gonna understand, and can I trust you with some of these, what I would consider dark things, right? It's terrifying. You know what I'm saying? One thing that I kind of learned though as I became an adult is that when I realized that I wasn't suffering alone, right? Like it's still a lot of people, even right now today, that are still dealing with silence. And the shame that comes with it or comes from it. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's so important, in my opinion, that we unsilence. We got to unmask. We got to unpack it. We got to find a way to have the conversations. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So what are the things that you may do in your silence? Like when your silence is too loud And what I mean by that is just when you're silent but it's so loud in your own head. What are some of the things that you do?
Good ways to overwhelm. Well, I mean,
or what do you just do in general? Like when your silence is living so loud in your head. What are some of the things you're thinking about? What are you going through? Or what do you do in those times?
Well, like we touched on journaling. So that's a good way to get some of the stuff off your chest without actually having to open up to a person. I don't know. I mean, I have different things that I like to do. I like music. I like to listen to music. I play like some video games or whatever. Just try to find a way to, come back to myself and just kind of, shut out all the exterior noises, because there's a lot going on here, and you want to be able to just kind of deal with that within yourself, and make it make sense and put it into order. So sometimes issues that we deal with, it's not as big as we make it in our head, and once you get to look at it from a certain perspective, you can kind of minimize it and deal with it within yourself. So
sometimes when our silence is so loud, it could be an overthinking process, right? We just overthought something so much. Depending on where we are emotionally with the situation, it's just a repetitive thing. You just kind of continue to go and go. You
realize it's not as
right
as you think.
But what happens is that if we're not careful, that loud part of our silence can lead us into even darker places.
True.
Right. And so I feel like that's where a lot of people deal with suicidal issues, attempts, because I wouldn't call it an issue, attempts, and depression, anxiety. You have all these different levels or layers that getting so caught up in our thoughts, right? With it being loud in our head and, silent vocally, because we're not speaking or we're not talking about it. You know what I'm saying? So one of the things for me that was very hurtful for me on my journey was when my silence fell on deaf ears, right? So, and what that was for me was like, when I felt like I wanted to tell somebody what I was going through. I was desperately in need of someone hearing me, help saving me, something, right? And it's like no one understood. If they didn't understand, they didn't care enough to help, because sometimes we live in a society like that ain't none of my business. That ain't none of my business, right? So, hey, I'm sorry you going through that. Shit, ain't none of my business, right? Not only that, not having the courage to stand up. So for me, I wanted someone to stand up for me as a kid, right? The things that I was seeing, went through myself personally, I wanted someone to stand up for me. And so when I would reach out, or find myself vulnerable enough to say something, people wasn't doing nothing. People was, what is it called? I can't think of the word, but people were just making things like normalizing the negative behavior of whatever that was, right? And we tend to turn a blind eye to the things that people are going through. And so for me, I always tell people, when someone comes to you in need, I believe that we should, if we have something to offer, we offer that, whatever that could be, right? And if we're willing to be a part of that journey to help them, then do that. There could come a road to some untruthful things from that person. We don't know. But if we cross that road, we just hold that person accountable, right? To whatever the circumstance or the situation could be, right? So could you do you remember a time where maybe your silence, where you was trying to speak out to someone and it just fell on deaf ears?
I would say yeah, because there were times where I think I really couldn't really articulate some of the stuff that I was feeling, because I really wasn't sure, the experiences that I was having, and it really did cause me to internalize it, and I think it became an issue for me, especially when I was like a teenager. When you're a teenager, you start having, going through your hormones, you're growing up, you're learning a lot of stuff. So, and there's a lot of stuff that you're dealing with that you experience, growing up, that, you internalize, and you really don't, really didn't know how to, vocalize it and articulate it. So, I was told actually by a parent that I needed to start opening up more, because it was starting to manifest and show itself in my behaviors and stuff like that. So I became like frustrated and
angry,
short-tempered, and so I was told to just write it out in the journal. If you don't feel like talking to anybody, just let it out. So that was pretty much like one of the things that I struggle with, was being able to articulate what it is that I'm dealing with, how to express it to somebody, to the point where I could get some kind of understanding from somebody. I could deal with whatever the issues that I was dealing with.
Right. And honestly, guys, as we can all know that there's so many different negative avenues of what silence can do to us. And that's why we're going to rip the tape off our mouths. We're going to open our mouths and live out loud and talk about it and stop living in silence. We're going to create a safe place where we can pour into each other, we can talk to each other, we can encourage each other, we can uplift each other, because it's just the right thing to do, right? So let's talk about some positive things, because we can really go all day about the negative things, but for me, I want to be a light to the world. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I want to think about some positive stuff, like and how we can come up with a solution. I'm solution based. Let's figure it out.
Is the problem?
That's it. So tell me what you feel like some bonuses are, for living out loud and speaking your truth and allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to young people, young men, right? Even some young ladies, they might look at you and you can be an influence to them, but I know it's a lot of young men out here who needs a great guy like you to be able to say, man, it's okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't, express yourself, it's just you like I said, you just internalize the things, and then when you start to surround yourself with people that you feel like you could talk to, and you start talking and you start voicing, how you feel, you start voicing your opinions on certain different subject matters, you start to realize there are a lot of people that's dealing with the same stuff that you're dealing with. And it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, because you feel like you realize that you're not alone. So that's the biggest thing, and I think that's actually the biggest, benefit of being able to speak your truth and express yourself.
Right. And see, that's why it's very important to speak.
Yeah.
Use your voice. That's why it's very important to just not stay silent, right? We, depending on your situation or anybody else's situation, we don't know how long we've been silenced, right? Yeah. For me, I was silenced for a very long time.
Right.
I can't shut up now, right? No, but for me, and that's why, being forced to shut up or being told to shut up, or it could be a problem for me sometimes. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? I have to catch myself sometimes, because it could be very triggering, especially when you come through and you found ways to kind of get through. Right. But at the end of the day, we're in control of ourselves. Right. And so when we learn that, we learn how to be in control. But it's still okay in our controlled environment that we speak our truth. Right. So I really appreciate you sharing it. What are some what would you consider important to be able to create a safe space for someone to talk or speak about what they're going through?
I mean, it should be like an atmosphere of like understanding. You know, you have to be understanding and be able to empathize with other people's situations.
Right.
So that creates an environment where they're comfortable with being able to open up with you or with, you know, whoever it is. I think that's like the most important thing for, you know, making a situation to where somebody could be able to be who they are and express whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Right. Well, you know what? One of the things that I didn't realize that was very important to me, because when I found my first safe place, and I use it now, and it's with a hug. I hadn't experienced a hug in so long, like a genuine hug, like, Lord, love on me, right? Like so it's so important for me that I welcome people with a hug, because what a hug did for me. Right. And a hug made me feel secure. Right. And so I had a young, not a young lady, a great woman who, she actually took notice in my trauma. And to think that I didn't experience a genuine hug until I was in middle school.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? And so, it was a teacher. You know what I'm saying? That gave me a hug. Right? And I felt safe. You know what I'm saying? I was just like, I hadn't had a hug in I don't know how long. Right? And for me, I think that was really what was really unique about that is that now who I am today, I think that she understood that it was some issues going on. It was, you know what I'm saying? And the way she created our safe place for myself was she never really asked, right? She never directly asked, you know, until we got to a place where we were comfortable enough, and then she felt a little comfortable enough to ask. But she allowed me to maneuver and move through things how I set fit. At my own pace. It was so important, and I even use this today. She met me right where I was at, right? So for me, when I get out in the community, when I talk to people, I like to meet people where they're at. You know what I'm saying? And I like to come with a hug, man, because sometimes it's just a hug that can change the whole atmosphere of things that we don't even know. You know what I mean? So when she did that for me, it was beautiful. It was really.
I totally understand. You know, I had a similar situation. You know, with a teacher, and it was a teacher that, you know, kind of helped me get out of a, you know, bad situation I was in when I was a kid. So I mean, we'll talk about it later on in this interview. So we'll touch on it. But
so tell me this. So for you, was it a hug that broke your silence?
It was basically like how you said she met you where you was at and just kind of like allowed you to, you know, be comfortable enough to where you was able to express yourself on your own terms. It was pretty much the same thing. You know, I was dealing with abuse when I was, you know, in the 4th grade, and I didn't vocalize it. I didn't tell people what was going on, but and because at the time I really, like I said, I didn't know how to articulate it, because at that time, you know, I thought it was normal to a certain degree, because, you know, a lot of people's gotten like whippings and stuff. So it's like, how do you explain that without making it seem like it's just not as big of a deal as what it is? So, but I was lucky enough to have a teacher who was, you know, aware and was able to pick up on what was going on, and, you know, was able to bring me to the side and, you know, get me comfortable enough to where he was able to I was able to express what it was I was going through, and it helped me out in the long run. So
that's good. That's real good. So tell me this: when so obviously in my experience with you, I really feel like God led me to you because we just met in CrossFit and you spoke to me and we just kind of boom boom and it just kind of took off and then we just kind of started having conversations and communication. We realized that we had been through some of the same things and we're coming through. We're coming out. We're overcoming. You know what absolutely. I'm saying? Would you consider yourself as a black sheep?
I wouldn't. My personal life. I wouldn't be able to say I was necessarily a black sheep. However, I do, empathize and understand where that, situation, that lifestyle, where it comes from, being, somebody that's, that doesn't quite fit in with, your family, just usually what it is. And you're around a lot of people, but you're alone.
Right.
You don't quite fit in with nobody. You look down on, frown up on, judged all the time because you're different. Right. Yeah, so it's I can understand that as being a very frustrating and lonely experience. Yes. So.
My God. So tell me this. Let's unpack some of the things that you feel like that you've been through in your trauma. Can you give us a little history about some of the things that you've been through or what you would consider your trauma was, or where you coming from in your...
So I have foster care background. I grew up in foster care. I was actually placed in the system 2 different times. So the first time, I was placed at the age of 8. My mom, she had bipolar schizophrenia disorder, so she was unable to take care of me and my siblings, the way that we were supposed to be. So we ended up being in the foster care system, and then it was, about a year before my grandmother and my father's side decided to get us out. So she was able to take custody of us, but she was, married to, a guy who wasn't our biological grandfather. He, was not very fond of us, I guess, and he was very abusive physically. Yeah. So we me and my siblings, we received a lot of physical beatings and stuff like that. And that lasted about 2 years before it came out at school. My teacher, like I told you, he discovered some things that was going on. And he was able to get me the help that I needed, and so eventually ended up in the foster care system again. So I stayed there from, this was like I was like 10 years old all the way up until I was like 18. So stayed in the system all the way through.
Right. After that. Jeez. So for me, I've never been a foster kid, right? But I know what it feels like to not have my mother, right? My mother didn't deal with, as far as I know, any diagnosis from a doctor, bipolar, anything like that. Right. But what she did deal with was drugs. She had she dealt with a lot of drugs. Right. She had me at a very young age herself. Right. And so she was very absent in my life. Right. She was kind of in and out. So I understand, and then it was a point in time in my life where I was homeless, right. And so I understand what that feels like not having your mother and wanting her, right. You know what I mean? Right. And so I remember feeling like, man, all I want is my mom. Right. You just be like, I just want my mom. Did you feel like that? Did you ever feel like you just want her to get better or get well enough so that you could just be with her and not be in the system or not be with family members who are going to be unfair to you?
Yeah, I really felt like it was an unnatural way of life. You go to school and, you got kids, classmates talk about, mom this, mom that, dad that. And, you don't have that. You don't have that. So you really can't really relate to, you know, what it feels like to have an actual, you know, family structure, a family household. So I think I adjusted to it over time, but you know, it was one of those things that I just felt like I missed out on, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when my mom was in my life and we were having our encounters, you know, it was a lot of drug and alcohol always involved. You know what I'm saying? All the way trickled down to even like my step siblings and myself, friends. Like she would even influence and allow alcohol and drug use at an early age, you know, because it's her background, right? And that's who she was even at that time, even today, right?
Yeah.
And so, which also led to sexual abuse, you know, and then when you talk about just from a sexual abuse standpoint, I encounter sexual abuse as well, but you know, when we're going through things, we abuse sex sometimes, right? So, you know, it would be called being promiscuous, right? Being that type of person, you know what I'm saying? So was there ever a time, you know, in your life where, you know, drug or alcohol or sex abuse was a thing for you because of what you were going through? I remember so distinctly, like, one of my really good friends, like she would come over every weekend, right? And you know, my mom knew she was coming. She knew what she liked, and so she just put her order in. Like, yeah, I'm coming. She knew she coming Friday, right? So she gonna get me when she see this interview. But I believe it was like a Coke 45 or Old English, you know, them 40 ounces. We young, what we doing drinking 40 ounces, right? But or even I think one of her favorite ones. I ain't gonna name drop you. I love you though, right? I'm not gonna name drop you, but even like Jack Daniels and stuff like that. And so like, I mean, and we are teenagers getting bum faced. All right, every weekend, my mom, if we got $2 or $3, and so what I realized, and I wasn't really interested in any of it, really. But I done it because I saw my mom doing it with my siblings and even my friends who were okay with using and doing drugs, smoking marijuana. When I say drugs, they mostly smoke marijuana. And my mother, she did do other drugs that'll come out later on in more interviews. However, but for the most part in my teenage years, you know, smoking marijuana a lot and drinking alcohol was a thing, right? And so my mom, she influenced a lot of that. When you know what I'm saying? At a young age, she encouraged it, you know, and it was okay. Right. And so here I am. I'm really not into any of that. I don't smoke or drink to this day. However, at that age, I felt like because I saw my mom doing those things with my friends, and this is the only person I want. Like, I want my mom in my life. So I want to look cool. I want to fit in just so my mom can accept me. And honestly, in my opinion, she did nothing more but reject me more. Now that I realize it today, right? So it was very hurtful because here I am indulging in all these different things, and you still don't even see me, right? You see everybody else, you encounter everybody else, but you don't see me. You understand what I'm saying? So back to the question, was there ever a time where drug, alcohol, even sexual encounters were a thing for you to help you cope with your pain?
Well, you know, I was taken, you know, into the system at a young age anyway, so I wasn't in a position where I was exposed to, you know, drugs and stuff like that, where I was able to get a hold of any of that stuff or whatever. But I will say, if anything, it might have been like, you know, sexual type thing. You know, I was, you know,
sexual urges.
Porn.
Yes.
I was, you know, I played because back in the day, you know, we didn't have internet. We could just go look up stuff. But
they sold the magazines out the store, right?
Yeah, you know, so stuff like that. But as far as drugs, I didn't indulge in any of that or alcohol or anything like that, just because we were, you know, since I was in the system, it was kind of you know, what's the word I'm looking for? sheltered, I guess. So I didn't have access to that. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's a good
You know,
thing,
sometimes with our trauma, you know, we just don't realize or even know it's just so many avenues that our trauma can throw us down that we have to be aware of.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, drug and alcohol and sexual abuse is just a few, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why even now this platform is so important to create a platform where we feel safe enough to talk about it. And I'm going to do everything in my power to help other sheep get healing. You know, whether it's through conversations, whether if I'm here to help aid some type of therapy, or whatever it is, right? Would you ever consider creating a platform that will be helpful for other foster children?
Absolutely. I think like everything that you go through in life is, you know, it's a lesson, and you can use that experience to, you know, guide someone else who has been, you know, dealing with similar circumstances, and, you know, kind of keep them on the right track. Because, you know, everybody is where they are now because somebody, you know, helped them at some point in life, whether it was a small, you know, gesture or whatever. But so I feel like it's everybody's duty to guide someone else, put somebody in a good you know good situation,
right?
You know, overcome whatever, you know, situations that they deal with too. So.
Absolutely, that's good. So tell me this, because you know, look here, ladies. Don't be trying to look my boy up or none of that, all right? You know, he a cutie and all. He handsome and all, right? Okay, but let's be real. How has your trauma affected your personal life? Come on now, keep it real.
All right, so I know this gonna sound bad because, you know, of everything that's going on.
Just be real.
All right, just to keep it real, 100. So, like I told you, I was in a foster care system, and I dealt with like abuse at my grandmother's house, and even when I was put into foster care, you know, there were like some type of abuse with even in the foster homes that we went to, and that kind of made my outlook on, you know, being around men, you know, uncomfortable. Like I really didn't want to be around or be in a home with another adult male. Not from like sexual abuse. I just felt like it was like more of the physical beatings and stuff like
authority.
That. Authority abuse. Yeah. So, you know, my outlook of just like being at home and then just having another male figure in the house. So I really wasn't comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like that for a long time up until I would say, you know, I became like a teenager, you know, at high school age, where, you know, I was able to like, you know, overcome that. And that negative stigma, because I just felt like men were abusive,
right?
Because that was my experience when I was a kid. So that was one of those things, and I always wanted to make sure that I never be that type of person.
Yeah.
You know, even with my kids or with whoever, you know, child or whatever, I didn't want to be that type of person that was, you know, abusive.
Right. So do you feel like your trauma has affected your love life?
Maybe to a certain extent, maybe just a little bit, just because, like I said, I didn't want to be seen as that, you know, overly aggressive like person. So it kind of like made me become a little bit more passive. You know what I mean. So, just, you know, being in relationships, you know, I just kind of like I feel like it affected my self-esteem to a certain degree, right? So, you know, I didn't really have much of self-esteem, you know, growing up, and even in my young adulthood, I was just pretty more of a, like, you know, laid back, you know, passive type of person. So, and that was a negative. It kind of affected me in a negative way because you know, you don't want to be that passive pushover type person.
Right.
You want to be able to, you know, assert yourself, you know, in a relationship or any situation, whether it be like in a professional setting, you know what I mean? So I was, you know, I had to really, you know, do some self-work, some deep work.
Yes,
and,
that's important.
You know, and deal with that and try to like mold myself and
be secure in you
and be who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was pretty much my experience.
Yeah, you know what? It affected me as well. I didn't know who to trust, who I could trust.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to love, if I should love, how to receive love.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it was everything was just like,
yeah.
Ugh, you know what I'm saying? For myself, and it still somewhat affects me today, if I be completely vulnerable and honest, right? And so sometimes it's been really good to have my accountability friendships that I do have that can be like, T, you wrong. Right.
Yeah.
But I do think about things too myself. So I don't have a problem with like being able to say sorry or be, you know, in a relationship. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but it did affect my confidence. And I'll tell you one thing, you know, growing up, I always was kind of cute. Okay, y'all better hold what you got. Now it's like, but you know what? If I be completely honest, like I didn't always feel cute, right? I didn't always feel confident in myself enough to be feeling like what people saw me as, and I'll be honest with you, it kind of, I think a little bit of the way I carry myself, as I analyze it right now today, it's probably a little arrogant. Right, but people couldn't see that. I don't know if they saw. They might did, you know, But you know, because and when I say arrogant, because from a standpoint of I was trying to be all these things, then just be myself. Right. Now that I know who I am, and I'm learning more about who I am, and I'm loving this version of me. I still think I'm cute. No, I'm just playing. No, but I'm more confident in myself. And so the things that I say, now I mean it, right? I mean it. Well, the things I say about myself, now I actually mean it, right? Because back then, you know, I would just pop at my bleep, you know what I'm saying? Pop at my, you know, I just, you know, I always had a little swag or whatever, you know. I always... you know, was dressed nice, you know what I'm saying? So I always, whenever I was able to get my own stuff, right? Because I did come from a very poor background, hand-me-down, you know what I'm saying? You know, if I go back a moment to that teacher, you know, that was the first time I actually experienced a real true Christmas where I was opening gifts and everything was new. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I got a new pair of shoes? What? I ain't getting it from the thrift store or the Payless, you know what I'm saying? So it was just like, dang, I got some Nikes. That's why I got a shoe obsession now. Those who know me, I got a shoe obsession. I used to walk around. I never forget, I had a pink and white pair of classic Reeboks. Probably why I don't like Reeboks to this day. Okay, I'm more of a Nike fan, and that's probably why I like Nike so much, because when I met Brooke, she got me a bunch of Nike stuff. Right, so that was her name, Brooke Savage. She gonna be here one day on this show, guys. You're gonna see my safety net. She's still my safety net to this day. I can call her when I need her. Even if she just called me right now, she know my tone so much. She be like, oh, wow. What is it? Y'all, she knows me. She know, like
what grade is this? Like, how long?
When I met Brooke, it was probably around the 8th grade.
8th grade?
Yeah, it was probably around the 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade. So, but that was my first time, you know, I experienced a Christmas from just experiencing new things. And that's why I got a shoe obsession. That's why when you go in my house or when you see me, I got on any kind of shoes. So, are you interested in any type of therapy, or do you do therapy?
You mean like me giving therapy?
No, have you received any therapy, or are you interested in it?
I actually am interested in, you know, continue to get therapy, because, you know, we always gonna need some kind of relief from all the stuff that we deal through on a regular basis. But I've had therapy, you know, since going through and growing up in foster care. We would go to therapy all the time, and it actually helped me to understand my way of thinking, understand myself, and how to deal with, you know, life.
Yeah.
You know, and but, you know, can't afford it right now.
Right, right.
But there's definitely other ways that I could, you know, kind of
receive
that type of help.
Right.
You know? So, like, you know, deep work, reading. You know, there's a lot of stuff you can
communicating,
you know, watching different like podcasts on different subject matters. So
yeah,
there's always a way to, you know, get out and express or deal with whatever it is you do with.
What is your religion background? I mean, like, do you believe in God? Like, what is it for you?
I do believe in God, and I grew up in the church. Even when I was in foster care, we always, you know, we go to church every Sunday. So I have I would say I do have a relationship with God.
So for me, it is very important that we use therapy and God's guidance and to help us get to a healing place, right? And so I always want to encourage that to my listeners and to yourself. Right. And if you need anything, you already know how to reach me, right? Yeah, but it's very important that we use therapy and God's guidance to help us get to a healing place, especially when we want to pour back into others, because the things we went through, we'll be able to pour back into others to help kind of bring them through, right? So it's really good to hear that, you know, because I was going to encourage that for you, right? Lastly, last question that I would have for you, what words of encouragement would you have for another foster kid that's been through some of the things that you feel like you've been through? That,
you know, they're not alone, and there's always, you know, resources for you for, you know, some whatever your background is, whether it be like sexual abuse, whether it be like physical abuse or whatever, neglect or whatever. There's always options. There's always resources out there for you to take advantage of to help you and kind of keep you on the right track. And there's always somebody out there to listen. And there's help out there for you. So you just have to look for it. You have to be open to it. So.
Right. And if you don't know, now you know, right?
You know.
All right. So I appreciate you coming out. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for unsilencing it for the men's side of things. I look forward to talking to you again and continue our healing journey.
I appreciate you having me.
Appreciate it. I love you, brother.
I love you too.
All right.